Hello, everybody. Welcome to our event. And let me start off by giving a little bit of background about Belong and what we do here. Belong is a social venture which works towards providing discrimination free services for marginalized identities, whether it's based on race or gender or sexuality or disability, caste, religion, ethnicity essentially. And what our literature collective does, the Belong Literature Collective, hopes to harness the power of literature to create a more inclusive and a kinder world, because we believe that books are a great way of looking into people's lives and understanding how people live their lives, people that are different from you. And the Belong Library Network is our very recent initiative, and it's our flagship initiative, which is a network of literary and cultural spaces across the country. So we have about 22 chapters, we call them, in about 17 to 18 cities. And each of these chapters is going to be a hub with a lending library where people can go and borrow these books based on diversity and inclusion. And there'll be regular author events like this one. Then there'll be all sorts of literary bookish events, whether it's quizzes or book readings, panel discussions, all sorts of stuff. And we would encourage you to go check out our website, which we'll put in the chat box, and which is belonglibrary.com, BELONGG library.com, and sign up for the library so you can be part of more of these events. As for today's event is an author interaction with Amir Narvankar, who has written and illustrated a very beautiful children's book called Ritu Vets Chandni. And let me tell you a little bit about Amir, and then he's going to tell us about his book. So, one second. Ameya is a multidisciplinary designer, a visual artist, and a bookmaker from India. An alumnus of IIT Bombay, Ameya believes in the power of design to bring about change, which he hopes to achieve through his foray into children's literature. This is his debut. And the book has been published by Yali Books, which is an independent publisher based in New York, who focus on South Asian literature, South Asian themes, and they want to reflect and validate the experiences of people of color, especially those of South Asian descent, through relatable and inspiring stories based on their lives. So we thank Yali Books for this collaboration with us, and Amir. And before I move on to Amir and he tells us about his book, let me give you a little bit of information about our chapters with whom we are co-hosting this event, which is the Bookworm Trust in Goa and the Storyteller Bookstore in Kolkata. So I would like Alexis to tell us something about the Bookworm Trust in Goa.
Hi, good evening. I'm Alexis and I come to you from Bookworm. We are based in Goa and we are a library as a physical space. We began in 2005 and our vision is to inspire and develop a love for reading and that inspires human engagement in every child. We have physically about 26,000 books. Most of them are children's books. That is about 95% of them. Um, so, as a library, we have a library and resource center as a space, and that is our main program. Then we have another three programs, which are libraries and schools, where our resource persons, our library educators, take the library as a school period to schools within that framework so that children are exposed to books, exposed to reading, exposed to the love of stories, etc. And this happens mostly in government schools or government aided schools. Then we have a mobile outreach program where we go to sites where children do not have access to libraries. So these are very diverse communities. And our last program is the professional development program, where we offer capacity building for people interested in library work and similar things like taking libraries to different communities, inspiring reading in different areas. So we have courses for these long term and short term. So that's about Bookworm, and I think everyone should visit us if you come to Goa.
Thank you, Alexis. And I'm so glad that you guys are one of our chapters because we really appreciate all the enthusiasm and all the great work that you guys do. And hopefully, we'll be doing a lot of more cool events in collaboration with you guys. So I would want to. Okay, I think Anusha dropped off. So we can maybe come back to her once she joins, and she can tell us a little bit about Storyteller Kolkata, which is another bookstore in Kolkata. So let's move on to Amir, who's going to tell us about Ritu Vet's journey and what the book is about, and read us some parts of the book. Over to you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Amya Narvankar, and I'm a designer. I stay in Bangalore currently. I'm originally from Mumbai. I make screens for a living. I'm a UX designer. So when I was studying in IIT Bombay doing a course in visual communication. So it was during this time that I wrote this journey. So I'm going to share one quote which I have come across. So it's by one of my favorite author and illustrator called Dallas Clayton. So it says, "What if you don't know the role you're playing, or your story isn't in the tales you have heard? Well, it means your character is still unwritten, and it's up to you to fill the page with words." So basically, this is sort of one of the reasons, to sum it up, which inspired me to write the book. When I was growing up, I didn't see these sort of stories where instead of a prince and princess getting married or a man and woman getting married, there are two women, two brides getting married. It's a celebration of love, this book. It's told from the point of view of this little girl. This is Aisha, and this is Ritu, and this is Chani. Aisha is Ritu's younger cousin, and she's very excited to uh, dance in her elder sister's barat. Uh, yeah, so let me just read this sort of blurb at the back, which will give you a gist of the book. Um, so Aisha is excited to attend her cousin Ritu's wedding. She can't wait to dance at the barat ceremony. But not everyone is happy that Ritu is marrying her girlfriend Chani. Some have even vowed to stop the celebration. Will Aisha be able to save the cousin's victory? So let's read on. It was the day Aisha had eagerly been waiting for. Her favorite cousin, Ritu, was getting married, and she was excited. Aisha twirled in front of the mirror and admired her lehenga. So you can see Aisha dancing in front of the mirror here, admiring her pretty dress that she is wearing for her cousin's wedding. And her parents also getting dressed. So while waiting for her parents to get dressed, she made up a little rhyme. My Ritu Didi is getting married today, and I'm going to dance in a barat all the way. She sang with a big smile on her face. On the way to Ritu's house, Aisha remembered the fun she had at Deepak Bhaiya's wedding a year ago. So Deepak Bhaiya is another cousin of hers, and she had attended his wedding the year before. So she's remembering all the fun things she had done at his wedding. So let's look what she'd done. She had gobbled up mounds of sticky sweet laddus and had danced with Ritu Didi and her other cousins in a big noisy barat. So here's Deepak Bhaiya getting married to a woman in a traditional ceremony. I wonder who this is though. And now, Ritu was going to be the first bride in the Kapoor family to lead her own barat, a wedding procession with music and dancing. And Aisha couldn't wait to be a part of it. So they're still on their way. They haven't reached the wedding venue yet. Aisha's mind was filled with happy memories when she heard her mother say, "The tradition has always been for the groom to bring the barat to his wedding. I'm not sure if everyone will be pleased to see Ritu leading the procession today." So as we have seen, it's usually the groom who is riding the horse in a barat. So Aisha could see that her parents looked worried. So they have now reached Ritu Didi's house where all the guests are there and Ritu Didi is getting ready as well. Ritu's house was decorated with garlands of fresh marigold flowers. All the guests had gathered in the courtyard. Walking up to the gate, Aisha could smell something delicious in the air. I wonder if it's those laddus. But something was amiss. She didn't spot any familiar faces in the crowd. So there's a whole bunch of people here, but it seems they're not familiar to Aisha. They don't seem to be relatives from their family. Where is everyone? Aisha wondered. She couldn't find her cousins Tanya and Rohan, or her Deepak Bhaiya and Tara Bhabhi. Even her grandparents weren't there yet. So Aisha finally spotted her Chachi. Namaste, Charu Chachi. Where is the rest of the family? So this is Charu Chachi, and she's finally seen a familiar face, and she's wondering where everybody is. They are not coming, little one. Why not, Chachi? Asked Aisha, confused. Well, they are not happy to see Ritu marry her girlfriend, she answered. But what is wrong with that? Why shouldn't she marry Chandni Didi? Aisha blurted. There's nothing wrong with them getting married, little one. Nothing at all, said Charu, looking helpless. It's just that some people do not understand their love. So Charu Chachi's been thrown a curveball and she's just wondering how to answer Aisha's tough questions. Turning to Aisha's father, Charu said, Bhaiya, some of the neighbors have vowed to stop the celebration. We are worried. Everything will be fine, Aisha's father assured her. Let's head the Barat, meet the Barat as planned. So I think these are those neighbors which Charu Chachi is worried about. They do look scary, don't they? They're on these really tall horses. She even have some ladders. Okay. Just then, Ritu joined her friends and family in the courtyard. She looked radiant in a bright red and gold sari. Aisha watched as her Chachi painted a vermilion tilak on Ritu's forehead. Then she had Ritu climb onto a decorated mare. So this is Ritu getting on the horse for a barat. So she's dressed in this beautiful red and gold sari. And even the horse has been decorated. She also has some mehndi done onto her hands. Aisha gushed, Didi, you're the most beautiful bride I have ever seen. Ritu's face lit up upon seeing her cousin. It means the world to me that you are here today. I wouldn't have missed it for anything, Aisha exclaimed, smiling back. So both the sisters are very happy to see each other. So the Barat has started now. The band started to play a lively tune and soon everyone was dancing. The Barat set off. Aisha swept up her lehenga and pumped her arms in the air. The wedding fun had begun. So this is the Barat, which we can see. Everyone seems to be having a really good time, dancing to the music, probably a funky Bollywood beat. You see Aisha right here Dancing with a Charu Chachi. There's Aisha's parents also have joined in. And it seems Ritu's also doing a little number on the horse. Okay, let's read on. Uh-oh. The procession slowly wound its way through the neighborhood. People peeked out of their homes. They had never seen a bride lead a barat before. So they're walking the barat through the neighborhood, and it seems they're not met with a very positive reaction from their neighbors. Some neighbors shut their windows with a disapproving bang. Others hurled harsh words at Ritu. Their shouts grew louder and louder until the band had to stop in the middle of a song. Aisha was shocked. Why would Ritu's neighbors say such hurtful words to her Didi on this special day? The Baratis, now nervous, walked in silence. So they had to stop their music. The neighbors were not very happy. It's unfortunate. Okay. As they turned a corner, the Baratis saw stern-looking riders on horses blocking the path ahead. Seems they are the same riders which we saw on the earlier pages. Ma, I'm scared. Why are they here? What do they want? Aisha asked, tugging at her mother's sari. So these are the Baratis, and then you have these tall horse riders towering over them, just making them feel very small, intimidating them. They've already stopped the music. Aisha glanced up at Ritu. She was no longer smiling. Aisha felt sad that her Didi was missing out on the singing and dancing. So it seems the they're still being chased by these horse riders. They're almost reaching the venue though. So let's see what happens. Just then, she spotted a second Bharat coming from the other direction. Chandni Didi. She too looked scared. So this is Chandni Didi here. She's coming from the other direction. Both of them are really close to the wedding venue. They're almost there. Let's see. The brides tried to move towards each other, but the riders stopped them from coming closer. The terrified Baratis watched as they uncoiled long hoses and took aim. Now, shouted their leader. Ice cold water rained down on the brides. So you can see they have got some sort of almost snake-like water hose. They're spraying the brides with ice cold water. The Baratis watched helplessly as Ritu's and Chandni's elaborate hairdos melted and their saris sagged and dripped. It's quite sad. All their clothes are drenched wet now. Aisha too was drenched and she began to cry. Through her tears, she saw Ritu trying to console Chandni. Aisha couldn't bear to see her Didi upset. She had to do something. So here, both the brides seemed very upset, and Aisha was like, I have to do something about it. With all the courage she could muster, she walked up to the riders on horses and announced as loudly as she could, My Ritu Didi is getting married today, and I'm going to dance in a barat all the way. And she started to dance. She twirled her lehenga and clinked her bangles. With her arms up in the air, she shook her shoulders. She swayed her hips and stamped her feet. Everyone was stunned. Charu Chachi jumped in and joined Aisha. The band started up playing music again. One by one, the Baratis gathered up their wet clothes and joyfully followed Aisha's moves. Now unafraid, Ritu and Chani led their guests into the wedding tent. Once inside, everyone applauded and cheered. So Aisha has saved the day, and both the brides are hugging her. The brides pulled Aisha into a tight embrace. It means so much to us that you're here today, Chani said softly. Aisha smiled and said, I wouldn't have missed it for the world, Didi. And the wedding has finally, the wedding took place. Like Ritu and Chani got married to each other, all in their wet clothes, along with all the other Baratis. And everyone is quite happy. There's Aisha cheering on the two brides with her parents. It's in a traditional Hindu ceremony. Um, you can also see some new people here. I think they are Chinese guests who have decided to also attend the wedding. Both of the brides are really pleased. They got their happy ending. All thanks to Aisha's efforts. So, despite all the trouble the two brides went through to get married, with the immediate family not showing up, with the neighbors saying really not so nice things to them, um, and unfortunately, then the horse riders throwing water all over them and essentially raining on their parade in some way. Aisha still had a good time at her sister's wedding. So there's this little photo album. You can see Aisha gobbling on laddus at her sister's wedding. Um, Years are with Ritu Didi, with the parents dancing. So they ultimately got their happy ending. So yes, we have come to that. That's the end of the book. Um, it's still going to be a very difficult thing for it to happen in real life. I know that, but this is an effort which I hope will pave way for um, people to who love each other to get married and sort of convince their families as well. So yes, it's a step in that direction, which will open conversations on the topic.
Thank
Right.
you so much for that, Amaya. I mean, I think the power and the sort of resilience of children is often overlooked, and I think to write more children's books with representation and with showing these things is going to play a huge role in normalizing anything that's out of the mainstream and the so-called normal, right? And I think you've done a such a beautiful job, and I've read the book and the illustrations are also wonderful. So everybody go and buy the book and actually see the illustrations for yourself, because Zoom does not do a great job at showing the illustrations. So before we go on to a few interesting questions that I had for Amir, and everybody, please do feel free to leave your questions in the chat. I just wanted Anusha, because Anusha dropped out because of internet issues before, to tell us a little bit about Storyteller Bookstore, because since we've been talking about kids and your bookstore deals a lot with kids, we would love to hear from you, Anusha.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank and congratulate Amaya on their book. I think the book is a revolution And like, thank you so much for representing our community. And if I would have had such books growing up, and many of us queer folks, if we had such books growing up, perhaps we wouldn't go through such a struggle with our identity. So thank you so much. And so we are Storyteller Bookstore. We are an independent bookstore in Calcutta, and we specialize in children's books. And through our books, we are trying to make children aware of different bodies, different abilities, different races, different genders, and different sexualities. So yeah.
Thank you, Anusha. And yes, I also think that if we all had such books growing up, we wouldn't have had to, I don't know, we wouldn't have thought that these things are strange or not right. If you could have just seen them represented in books, which is why representation is just so important. So thank you, Ameya, for this attempt at paving the way for more representation. So I had a few questions for you. Firstly, what I wanted to ask was, what does the idea of a family mean to you? Because we see that the book has a lot about, has a lot of mentions to families and relatives, and especially in the Indian context where a family is very inextricable from like your own identity. We are not a very individualistic culture. So that's why I think this book is even more revolutionary in an Indian context. Traditionally, as in we are very family oriented. So could you elaborate on like the different kinds of families that might exist, and what does a family mean to you? Yeah.
So for me, family would be somebody who I would be comfortable being myself with. Um, yeah, growing up in India definitely is difficult, and we sort of look to form our own families as queer individuals. So traditionally, it's always been man, wife, and two kids. But as I grew up, I thought it had the world for me as a child had been my parents and my sister, and we were like this one family. And I sort of looked at that. That is the only sort of family I thought there could be. But as I grew up and I went to study in college, I sort of the people around me became my family. My friends became my family. And as queer individuals, we sort of look, as I mentioned, forming our own families, our friend circles who we could be open with, who accept us. They sort of become our families as well. My plants are also a part of my world. They are my family. I stay with two pets. They are my families. A family can be anyone. A man and a man can also have a family together. A woman and a woman can also have a family together. A single parent and their child could also be a family. So our idea of family that it should just be two parents and kids, it's dated. Like it has to evolve, and we need to understand as Indians that people who accept us for who we are, who we can share uncomfortable silences with, who will love us unconditionally, they are our family.
Yeah,
Yes.
I must say I really agree, and I feel like the whole idea of unconditional also is really like complex, and we do have a lot of families where your parents may not be the definition of a family for you, and maybe your dog loves you unconditionally, like you said, your dog is your pets are part of your family, and that's just really important, I feel. Thank you for that. Secondly, what I wanted to ask you was, what do you think about the concept of love? Since we spoke about family, moving on to love, whether it is between friends or whether it's between two partners or parental, just in general. Because again, this book is about celebrating love in all kinds. Because Aisha is Ritu's cousin, but you see that sort of acceptance in her also. So could you tell us a little bit more about that, and about the thought process that went behind choosing an unconventional kind of love for your story? Yeah.
Yep. So I would say it's closely linked to the first question again. Like love is, you can love anyone that way. It is unconditional, as we have spoken about. You will be there for that person. You will celebrate their joys with them. Their happy memories will also be there for the person in their harder times. It's just being there for somebody, I feel, unconditionally. And yeah, I chose two women for the stories because even when I wanted to do queer representation in my story, so my thesis was on the visibility and representation of queer community in India, which was my master's topic. I saw that there was a dearth of literature, especially for children, in a queer context. I found a few books. So this was one of the books. It's about two penguins. They're two male penguins. It's based on a true story in a zoo. And they adopted these two gay penguins. They have adopted, they're still raising it. I think 98 was when there have been a couple for that long, like two animals, two gay penguins. So I thought, okay, I want to do something like this in an Indian context because none of it exists at the moment. Um, and while looking at it, I thought, okay, we have seen some bits of gay representation in Bollywood, even though it has been problematic for sure. There is like a dearth of lesbian fiction. So I thought, okay, let me sort of also add in the intersectional aspect to it and how the struggle would be different for two women. And that's what led me to writing a story about these two brides. I also wanted to touch upon the fact that the bride sort of rides on their own horses. So they're sort of breaking the gender norms that it will be a groom who should be riding the horse. And both the brides are riding on horses. Yeah, so, all right.
Yeah, and I really like the part when they're just dancing after even after being sprayed, even like you said, it's a very clever pun, by the way. Their parade literally got rained on. I love that part. So I feel like that's a very important thing, to be able to be joyful in the face of oppression, or whenever there's hatred. I mean, there's no better way of combating it than just still going ahead with what you're doing. And I think Aisha just did that so beautifully. And also very important point about intersectionality, because yeah, like you said, there has been a little bit of representation when it comes to men loving each other, but with women it's like a bigger taboo, not just in India, but I think everywhere. So kudos on choosing this particular story. Okay, so my next question is, and then we can move on to a few of the audience questions, is so there are the two questions, kind of. One question is, what are your thoughts on illustration as a medium for children's books? As in, because you're a designer, and you aren't just a writer. Do you think it adds to the whole impact? Do you think it's more accessible for children? What do you think of illustration as a medium?
um, I feel picture books and children's book in general are like the window for kids to the outside world before they step into the real world. This is how they know about people who are different from themselves, about different cultures, and sort of readies them to the world. Pictures are they're universal. Like it doesn't need a language or words. Children would just understand something right from pictures. So I think illustrations speak well in that sense. Just not in just the fact that the colors, all sort of colors that you would see in an actual wedding, which children would be attending from a really young age, especially in India. So they are familiar with that imagery. So I wanted to sort of bring that in as well. So they could place themselves in Aisha's shoes and sort of um, see how they would react to such a situation.
Yeah, yeah, I think visually, I mean, kids are always more attracted to visuals than to words. So like, it's easier to get the message across than just a very wordy book maybe.
Yeah. So this was my book when I had written it back in 2015. So this was the outcome of my thesis. Uh, so the illustrations were much simpler, and this is the story. Like we changed a lot, and this is how it evolved along with Yali books.
Mm.
It's much richer and elaborate that you would actually sort of associate the imagery with a wedding.
Yeah, and I think the fact that the imagery is so rich really I don't know, instantly appeals to kids. And I personally loved reading the book because I haven't read illustrated books in so long. It really took me back to my childhood, and the whole innocence that children have. And I feel like, so that's going to be my last question before we move on to the audience questions, which is something that we did touch upon briefly throughout our conversation, but I feel like I want to hear more from you about how, um what do you think about children, and I don't know. I mean, what do you think? What's the importance of having these kind of books, in children's literature? And do you think that, because I was reading one of your interviews and you said that like children are not born bigoted or homophobic, So with regard to that, if you could tell us a bit more, what do you think about just children in general when it comes to these issues and these difficult conversations? So yeah.
So children are not born with biases. It's something that they pick up from adults. It's a learned behavior. Um, so that was one of the reasons I decided to opt for a children's book, because I wanted to sort of break the cycle of homophobia that we see today. Because adults, we are sort of conditioned right from childhood that being different from this convention that we have set is wrong. And that is what children pick up, and they sort of pass it on from one generation to another. So we have to break that cycle somewhere. And children are aware of certain things right from childhood. They might be struggling with their own identity, or they know of a friend or a sibling who's also undergoing something like that. And just reading about it sort of validates their identity. It tells them that there is somebody like you, that things are going to be okay. I think that sort of helps children come to terms with them. Like, bullying is still, like, I feel, a very playground reality even today, despite all the strides we have made. So I hope there are more books like these put in the market, which is sort of like, normalize that there are different kinds of people in our world, and all of us together will sort of enrich it rather than, like marginalizing another community.
Yeah, yeah. Also, like as a continuation, do you think it can be vice versa as well? Like, do you think children can play an instrumental role in, you know, reducing the bigotry in there? Like, a lot of children might be very open and they might go to school and learn these things. I've read that curriculums are starting to involve, inclusive education, inclusive topics in their education, but then they go home and then their parents are like, what did you learn in school? Or so, do you think, what do you think about that? Like, can they children help their kids be uh, more inclusive?
So yeah, there will be gatekeepers, but yes, children have a voice. They have a say in things, and there will be instances where the parent would be learning from their own child about things. So yeah, I think that would definitely something we should aim for.
Yeah, that's true. So I think we have a couple of questions. One is from Jay, who wants to know. It's related to what I just asked. When we bring such issues to children, what can be the first approach we use? So he's saying that I felt children in my own family when I tried to tell them about either same sex marriages, either their parents raised a voice or the elder ones around had a problem. So, how do we as individuals start the conversations while knowing that the parents might not agree with it? Like, say in this case, Ritu and Aisha are cousins. So, if Aisha's parents were not open minded, then maybe that could have been a problem. So, what do you have to say about that?
So you need to start small. Maybe just start having conversation where you casually drop in something about your queer friend, your gay friend, or your lesbian friend around your families, to sort of to sort of like gauge, what sort of resistance you might face. Um, and so this book, I would say, doesn't really include words which parents might find taboo. So sort of something like these books can also be a conversation starter
Yeah.
without all the awkwardness. Maybe just casually you have to start dropping a few hints to gauge their responses.
Yeah, that's true. Books are
It
like
will be an
always.
upward battle for sure. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and like if it's very simplistically put, in the end, it's just a love story, right? So, it's very simple. I mean, parents might not even, have a problem with it if it's presented like this. So that's a great point. He wants
Another
to add.
point,
Yeah.
another point I had was like why visibility and representation matters a lot. When you have a bigger celebrity, I'm trying to think of someone in the Indian context, which I can't draw a name right now. But if like a queer person in the limelight sort of is open about their sexuality, and your pet, and it's a role model who you can talk about in front of your parents, I think that could also be a conversation starter.
Yeah, that's true. Because then even if it's like an actor or like someone who's a little bigger name, right? Yeah, yeah, that's always a great way. Jay just wants to add to the first one, asking what do you think? So it's similar, but if you would want to answer this, what do you think can be the approach we as a community should use for children? And knowing that our education system, most societies, small town children, from the beginning throws very mainstream ideas of identities on them. So he wants to ask, what are your thoughts on representation in children's literature so far, like the contemporary literature scene? Do you think there is it's are we making some progress, or what do you think?
So there are a lot of progressive book publishers in India who are putting forth content. Um, I recall Pratham Books just released a book recently, I think this year itself. It's called Satrangi Ladke and Satrangi Ladkiya. It again celebrates diversities, like men can have long hair, women can do diverse different kinds of jobs. So there are being steps being taken to sort of bring in this whole diverse aspect to Indian literature. Um, but yeah, there are gatekeepers as well, like as you mentioned, like in
Yeah.
schools, from parents, there will be resistance, but we have to keep chipping away till.
Keep chipping away. Yes, that's really true. Yoshita has a question. Yoshita from our team only has a question. Can you talk about your publishing journey? Why did you choose to publish with Yali, which is a US-based publishing house? Do you think Indian book markets are still not welcoming, towards diversity? Yeah.
So when I wrote this book, it was 2016. At that time, the law had not passed yet. It was still a criminal act. So I did start initially my search for a publisher by writing to Indian publishing houses. But I guess because of the law, they were sort of apprehensive. Um, I had a lot of rejections from Indian publishers. And some of them told me they had liners. I think they were too polite to just downright reject me. A few of them did show interest and did pass me contacts for other publishing houses. I did come across Yali and saw they had sort of dabbled in diverse literature. And yes, since they specialize in South Asian literature, I thought it would still be a fit, even though it wouldn't reach the Indian audience in our country, which I was hoping for. But I hope slowly we also get distribution for the book here.
Inch by
Yes.
inch, we might, we get there someday, but people like you will have to keep writing books like these and hope
And
that.
I think post the decriminalization, there have been a few books coming out which,
Yeah.
not outright, like I mentioned, Pratham Books having Satrangi Ladke, Satrangi Ladkiya.
Yeah.
So books like that are coming out. So there is hope, like they would warm up to such stories now.
There is hope, yeah. And there are, like, now that it's decriminalized, I mean, people might find it safer to publish these books and write these books as well. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And I think we do have hope, though. We have a lot of people, and a lot of them do care about living in a leaving behind a more inclusive world that they were raised in, which is really important, I feel. So Saransh has a question. He's asking, have you experimented with other art forms as well?
So is Saransh, is this with respects to this particular book or in general?
Saransh, if you are there, could you type it out in general?
Oh, in
In
general. Oh,
general.
definitely. So I primarily work with digital illustration. So these were digitally illustrated,
Mm.
but I do enjoy. So when you introduce me as a bookmaker, I do also make handmade books. I
Mm.
do tie and dye. Um, I'm trying to recall all the. I do a lot of DIY crafts. You can find all about it on my Instagram.
Mhm. That's lovely. Send us over a cute bookshelf or something, so it's always nice to have handmade things around. So yeah, we don't have any more questions except somebody who says hello celeb, signed copy please, probably one of your friends. So thank you so much, Amir, and it has been a truly delightful conversation, and this is the first children's book that we've had in our lineup of December events, and we hope to have a lot more interactions with children as well. So one second, I think there is a question from Facebook Live. Okay, we have a question from Arun who is asking, okay, our education system is not inclusive in terms of sexuality, gender, etc. How do you see literature accepted in general? Do you see? I think you have kind of covered this. Did you see publishers accepting in general, for popular or commercial aspects? But like you said, it's um, slowly changing, and we have hope. So I think we've covered that question. That
I
question.
think you would be doing a really great job disseminating that with the Belong Library network. So.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you
The
till?
library network, I think we are getting there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we hope to do to kind of make diverse and inclusive literature accessible, because all of these books exist, but people don't know about them. People will go and read the same old books by the same old people. So, that's the whole point of collaborating and creating spaces where diverse literature can be read by people, and not just adults, but also kids, which is why we've partnered with Bookworm or Storyteller, which have a lot of kids in their audiences. And once your book is available in India, obviously we will be distributing it, and people, we can send it to our libraries in these chapters, and people can borrow the book and buy the book. And I hope they do so, because it's a really really cool book, and I love the illustrations. So thank you so much, Anusha, Alexis. Do you have any concluding statements?
Not really, except thank you so much for creating this book, which is quite lovely to look at. And I love how you chose two women, and I like your logic for it too. And it was really great to be a part of this, and we really hope that there'll be more people next time. But this was a good start, I think.
Yeah, and I
Thank
hope
you.
like we can definitely
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
go ahead.
uh, yeah. Yeah, same as Alexa said. Thank you so much, incorporating two women in this book, because there's literally no representation or current representation rather of lesbian literature. And thank you so much. I said it's a revolution, and I think it's gonna pave the way for a lot more. And honestly, I would like to write, like a book on someone who's on a woman who's queer and disabled. So yeah, I definitely take inspiration from your book. And thank you so much, Belong, for making me a part of this. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. I think it's just great. It's a very beautiful collaborative relationship. And again, thank you, Amir and Yali Books for Ambika is not here, but
Unfortunately,
um
yeah, he didn't
for
be here today. But thank you so much to Team Belong and Bookworm and Storyteller Kolkata. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Yes.